Auzubillahiminashaitanirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, my YouTube family. This is basically an academic topic where I want to interact with those individuals who are interested in global pandemics and a security threat. And moreover, this is also relevant to the present situation where we can see that the global pandemic in face of coronavirus has devastated many states, and it has impacted the security of various states, and it has posed an existential threat to the survival of individuals, which has indirectly or directly posed threats to state security. So basically, the article Global Pandemics, a Security Threat is written by Joseph Jagged. And here he has introduced us to various impacts of global pandemics on the security of states, and how that security impacts the domestic, economic and military structure of that state. Moreover, he will also tell us of some limitations that when we securitize the global health issues or the pandemics or the infectious diseases as a security threat to the state, then what are the limitations that we have to take into account. So we, as we know that there have been many pandemics that occurred in our history, and the World Health Organization, it has estimated that since 1945, it means after World War II, 23 million people died due to AIDS, TB and malaria. So these are the diseases, these are the infectious diseases. And it is also estimated that the AIDS related deaths, they have, their number have doubled since one decade. And it is also estimated that they are likely to double again by 2030. So why we consider the global health issues as a security threat? Because when we see and when we look into them, we find out that more there are more risks from diseases than from war, terrorism and violent conflicts, as the WHO report has already depicted that 23 million people died due to AIDS. So talking about the security perspective, when we see the global pandemics in face of a security perspective, then we say that these infectious diseases, they are posing an threat to the internal stability of a state, because they are challenging the economic structures, and moreover they are also impacting on the military effectiveness of any state. And when we take the health perspective, then we say that securitization that can garner additional resources. And when we securitize the health issues as security threats, then we get more funding to combat the develop to combat those diseases, and to develop certain institutes that help in combating those infectious diseases. So, talking about how global pandemics threat state security, we can say that the global pandemic threats state security in three ways. It threatens the domestic structure of a state, it threatens the economic structure of a state, and moreover, the military structure. So, now we will look into the details of how it impacts the domestic factor of a state. First, we have to look into the details of how the global pandemic threats state security domestically. So, we know that whenever there is a pandemic situation, that results in the internal societal disruption, because whenever the people are dying, then it poses exogenous threats to states, because people die, and when the population is not secure, then obviously it poses a direct threat to state security. Moreover, we also know that globalization and the mass movement of people and goods has facilitated the rapid travel of infectious diseases. So when these diseases are happening, or when there is a pandemic outbreak, then there are potential risks that are associated with all these infectious diseases. Number one, when the government is unable to effectively remove the risk of all these pandemics, then there is lack of confidence in state, and moreover the social inequalities are exaggerated, because some strata of society is able to cope up the impacts that the pandemic posed domestically, but there is a strata, the unprivileged people in the society, that are ignored totally in these pandemic situations. So there are social inequalities that are exaggerated in this condition. Moreover, there is also the inability to maintain the public services, as workers they are ill. So when you have no workforce, for example in lockdown situation, when your industries are closed, so that also that also pose a challenge to the government to maintain the public services that they are providing. In view of all these conditions, the domestically the pandemics and the infectious diseases, they not only threat the credibility of government, but they also are catalysts for internal violence. For example, when we see to HIV AIDS in sub-Saharan Africans, we see that the threats, the impacts of threats are not universal, but they have disrupted the social structure of sub-Saharan regions differently, because some people are more affected by these pandemics and some are less affected by these pandemics. So, as we have discussed the domestic impacts on a state due to the different global health issues, or due to different pandemics that occur in our societies, now we will move towards the economic impacts. We know that whenever any pandemic disrupts or outbreaks, then there is economic disruption in society, because the a state funds funding, and a state is spending more on health, and moreover we know that economic disruption occurs because there is shortage of workers, and productivity is reduced. Another factor which we can discuss in economic impacts is that uh, the foreign investment is also reduced, because there is a lack of confidence that the market is not stable. So for proper trade in commerce, you need stable markets, and in pandemic situations we know that markets are closed, as we have observed this thing much more in the coronavirus. Here we can also take the example of 2002 and 2003 SARS outbreak, where there was 30 billion reduction of trade, 30 billion US dollars loss in Asia, and moreover the USA has given relief packages to Hong Kong, which are 1.8 billion. So that 1.8 billion could have been utilized somewhere else, but due to the disruption of or due to the outbreak of SARS, this much amount of money was allocated to certain areas. So we also know that HIV is impacting more, and it is more costly, because it affects the age group which are the most of them are professionals and they are skilled workers, and they play an important role in economic progress. So when this strata of society is attacked, then there is an economic decline. And when there is an economic decline, when there are when the societies are disrupted, when there is economic decline, then there are less chances of stability and peace in those states, and that in turn leads to internal violent conflicts and crimes, and multiple evils are associated with these pandemics. Now moving towards the military aspects, how the pandemics impact the military of a state, because we know that the AIDS or the it is not particularly related to pandemics or the infection. We can also take into account the infectious diseases like AIDS. Their rates are, higher in military in various sub-Saharan African states. So the article is mostly about the sub-Saharan African states, but here I am analyzing it because I think that this is, related to the present condition, where we can link it to the coronavirus as well. So HIV infection, is more in Malawi and Zimbabwe, where its percentage is till 75 to 80%. And moreover, there are also elements of South African military, where HIV is, 90%, like the 90% of the military population is affected by this pandemic. So how it aroses problems in military, because the experienced middle managers, uh, who have the, specialist technical knowledge, they are at high risk of death, because armed forces, they are severely affected. And when they are affected, they are unable to recruit enough personals to replace their sick and dying colleagues, because whenever a pandemic erupts, or whenever, army is affected by these viruses or pandemics or infectious diseases, so then the death rate, gets high. And when the death rate gets high, it gets difficult for, for the military to recruit enough of the people that have been replaced. So basically it impacts the military structure, and it reduce troop morale as well, because when the condition is worse, your morale is down, and you do not want to perform your duty. So they you get the dwindling numbers, like you have no proper morale in the army to work in that particular situations. So now we can also add that violent conflicts also accelerate, the spread of infectious diseases. Like we know that in conflicts, soldiers are willing to engage in risky behaviors, because uh, they are in a pressure. So they when they we have seen that in many conflicts, women are raped, and that also leads to the spread of infectious diseases. Moreover, there is also the migration during conflicts, which also results in the spread of diseases, because whenever there is migration, so the people who are migrating may, take the disease or the virus along with themselves, and then wherever they will move, they will spread that disease to the next generation. Moreover, we can say that returning soldiers, when the soldiers are, returned back to their home state, they can also spread disease there. So there are long term implications for state security in that case. So we see that the risk of military personnel contracting HIV is 100 times higher than that of the civilian population, because they are constantly moving, they are in various operations, they are interacting with various people, where they are performing their duties. So they are more in a risky condition than the civilian armies. And we also see that whenever, peacekeeping forces go for some particular missions, the state, if they are, if they have contracted some infectious diseases, the states will be unwilling to accept them back. That was the case in the sub-Saharan African as well. Because they have, high number of infectious cases like HIV, as I have mentioned before. But they also, contribute towards the United Nations peacekeeping forces, where HIV is very prevalent. And like the states like Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana. So this is also one aspect of how the global pandemics impacts the military. Moreover, we have now seen this, increase weaponization, disease weaponization by military. And we have some examples in the history where diseases have been used as tools, um, for to counter the states. For example, anthrax attack against US in 2001. So now bioterrorism is a major security concern. The man-made, the artificial manufacturing of viruses, as we have seen many news that the coronavirus is also man-made, and it is artificial, and it is created by China, and some says it is created by America. So although we don't have any evidence of this news till now, but we know that bioterrorism is a major security concern, because Iraq has used the bioterrorism against Kurdish population in 1998, and there are many other examples of Tokyo's attack on Tokyo subways using sarin by various personals, and use of chemical weapons by Syrian governments against the civilian population in 2003. So HIV and AIDS, they have also been used as a biological and psychological weapons by American armies, African armies. So we say that a global pandemic is a threat to state security in a way that it weakens the military, and a weakened military could increase the chance of internal violent conflict, or it can weak the state capability on international level. Moreover, infectious diseases have also the potential to be weaponized and used against both military and civilian government. So there are less developed states as well, like I have mentioned the examples of sub-Saharan Africans, which are at more risk, which are at greater risk than developed states. So now we have completed our one aspect of the article, that how global pandemics threat the different states at different levels, and how they impact the internal stability of a state at three levels, that is domestic, economic, and military. Now we will move towards the limitation of securitizing global health issues. So first of all, we know that security there is no consensus or for a singular conception in international relations. Traditionally, we know that states were the referent objects, and then security for states was to protect and preserve a state sovereignty and its territorial integrity and its population per se. But now there are alternative approaches to security. Now when there are international institutions, and when there is a debate on liberal ideals and democracy, so now humans are taken as referent objects, and security means to safeguard and preserve human life. So how to provide security to humans? So there is a concept that humans must be free from their wants, and they must be free from fear. So what does human security comprise of? It comprises of the freedom from wants and freedom from fear. By wants we mean the socio-economic needs, the need of life, the need of food, the need to live a free life. This is our basic necessity. And by freedom from fear, I mean that we need safety from violence. We must not be living in a condition where there is disruption, where there is internal conflicts, where we are fearful of our life, and where we are not provided with the basic necessities. So the duty of the state is to protect its humans and to secure its humans. And now traditionally state security was more important, but now the security of its population, the security of its individuals, the security of humans living in its boundaries are more important. So now we can say that the states have shifted their attention towards human security, and that happened mostly in the post-Cold War era. Although the concept of security has broadened, like we have incorporated the concepts of health and environment into security, but again we should keep in mind that national security is more important than human security, Because in international relations and international politics, states pursue their national interests, and when states pursue their national interests, they take into account national security more than human security. For example, we know that tobacco related diseases, they account for more deaths each year than any other natural cause. We know that many people are getting the tobacco, they are using tobacco, and in return they are getting various diseases. But as they do not pose a direct threat to states' security, so therefore the tobaccos are never securitized. Now I will later explain the concept of securitization in international relations, but for now you should know that states securitize issues that harm, that are for their interests and that harm their national security. So now, moving towards the concept of securitization, and the writer has also depicted the limitations that the concept of securitization poses when we securitize the global health issues. So first of all, securitization is a concept that has been given by a school of thought which is known as Copenhagen School of Thought. So basically, they talk about the intersubjectivity of various concepts, and they say that social concepts are intersubjective. We can have our own interpretations of those social concepts, and moreover, they also talk about the importance of speech acts. By securitizing something, we mean that we use particular speech acts, and those speech acts are used by the elite or the security actors in response to some existential threat or maybe a perceived threat. So then we should come towards the issues that we face, the limitations when we securitize, when the elite will securitize the concept of global health. What will happen then when we say that the global health um, issues, the global pandemics, they are a security threat? When the elite will securitize it, what will be the issues, what will be the limitations regarding this? First of all, when we securitize these global health issues, it frames those issues of global health as technical biomedical problems, which can be prevented or cured. But they will fail to address the underlying structures, the underlying political structures that are basically resulting in that disruption. Now, coming towards the issues, we know that when we frame the issues of global health as technical biomedical problems which can be cured and prevented, then the states will fail to address the underlying structures that produce and reproduce global health inequalities. For example, we know that in 2014 there was an outbreak of Ebola virus. So what happened when it was securitized? So it simply acted as a leverage for government elites to secure the additional resources, and the securitization of Ebola did not help to solve the existing health problems, and it has just benefited the elite at the top of the government structures, because they have utilized those resources, and they have done nothing to solve those problems. So moreover, there also exists a unidirectional relationship between security and health, because when we focus on how selected health issues create risk for national security or economic growth, we also have to focus how might these issues should be the concern of foreign and security policy. So here the agenda is not of how the foreign and security policy can promote global health, but we have to prioritize that state security over human health and address the health issues that threat our state. So When we prioritize state security, then there is the we invisibilize the non-communicable diseases from agenda. For example, the diarrheal disease that have killed 1.8 million people per year. So the state security has nothing to do with diarrhea. Okay, if it has affected, if it has affected 1.8 million people worldwide in a year, that's okay for a state, because for state politics, for state politics, things are very different. So health funding priorities, they are shifting towards core state institutions, like, there might be, given medical priority to military. So we can say that there exists the biasness on part of the present institutions nowadays, which needs to be, reverted. Moreover, we can see the political biasness of World Health Organization, WHO, because it works on voluntary donations from states and non-state actors. And it, when you get donations from states, you will, promote their agenda, and you'll advance their research that benefit the states that are, funding you more. So it, impacts the human health in a negative way, because the less developed states who are not giving funds to WHO are, they are nowhere in this game. And we have seen that there were tensions between WHO and less developed states, like Indonesia case during the avian influenza outbreak, because Indonesia, he withdrew from WHO virus sharing mechanism due to the anger that Indonesian samples of HIFN1, that was the virus, they were being used in American laboratories due to to develop a commercially profitable vaccination without consent. So what the America was a strong state, and it is funding the WHO mostly. So they have not even asked Indonesia that they are sharing their sample to America. So this is how they, when we securitize certain issues, then these political structures, and they are ignored. And when we securitize global health, then it, um, gives priority to the medical and technical aspects, but it does not, the securitize the underlying structures that are promoting these health problems. So when we securitize certain issues, it could lead to the WHO idea of global health security, mostly national security of Western states from health risks. And the less developed states, they will be, far behind this game. So, in the end, we can conclude that, global pandemics do pose a threat to state security, and the extent to which they are a threat is determined by how developed the state is. Because I have analyzed and I have told you that how the developed states are affected and how the less developed or developing or underdeveloped states are affected, there is a different parameter for that. And when we say that they pose a threat to state, so a state is threatened in three key ways. That is at domestic level, where the infectious diseases, they can foster social inequalities, and they challenge the family life, where the breadwinner of the family has lost its life. So that is, problematic for the for the family as well. And moreover, when this happens, that leads to internal violent conflict. Secondly, at the economic level, we know that the infectious diseases, they can stunt our GDP growth because of the lack of foreign investment, and increase health expenditure, and that also stimulate violent competition. So lastly, within the military case, where infectious diseases can be weaponized and they can decimate armies, and soldiers, they can act as vectors to spread diseases when they are moving from one place to another. So these threats will not challenge all states in equal ways. That's the important thing, because by far impacting the most on less developed states with weak government or poor health infrastructure. So they will basically impact the states which have a poor health infrastructure. Moreover, the challenges that global pandemics pose to state security, they are very real. But what I have argued is that securitizing global health issue is a short-sighted and ultimately ineffective approach to dealing with global health issues. This is because the securitization process, it shifts our emphasis away from human health to state security, and in doing so it has failed to address the underlying political structures that cause global health inequalities. So we need to have a holistic approach that places humans as referent objects of security, and the current unidirectional relationship of health and security that I have explained, it must be overturned so that security and development policies can benefit global health, which will in the long term reduce the threat that global pandemics pose to state security. That was all from my side. I hope you have understood the video well. This is just an academic video where I want to interact um, with those who are interested in pandemics and how what is the security perspective in that, and how the politics in global issues works.